Her pointy ears suggest, Frieren is an elf stated to be over 1,000 years old, though it's never specified how much over 1,000 actually is. What we do know is that Croft, the only
Frieren. Overpowered character done right or done wrong. Frieren. Beyond Journey's End presents one of the most interesting cases of an overpowered protagonist in modern anime. Frieren is undeniably strong. Her magic dwarfs almost everyone around her. She has centuries of experience, mastery over spells most mages never even learn, and a calm confidence that makes danger feel almost irrelevant. The real question isn't whether Frieren is overpowered. It's whether that power is handled correctly, because overpowered characters are notoriously difficult to write well. Let's get into the video.
The other elf we've seen so far in the anime calls Frieren young, meaning that elves in this universe are capable of living for many thousands of years. She's also a mage, with a wealth of knowledge regarding anything to do with magic. It's difficult to miss the parallels between Frieren and Saitama from One Punch Man. They both have an apathetic outlook on life, albeit for different reasons. They both obsess over things that most would find mundane, and both can easily dispose of any creatures that stand in their way. Considering the manga is relatively new, I wouldn't be surprised if Kanehito Yamada took some inspiration from One Punch Man. With that said, they also have their differences. The plot of One Punch Man hinges on Saitama remaining trapped in his state of apathetic depression and remaining static as a character, whereas Frieren gradually develops an appreciation for life with the help of those close to her.
Traditionally, OP protagonists kill tension. If the main character can't lose, can't be threatened, and can't fail, the story collapses under its own safety net. And on the surface, Frieren seems to fall into that trap. She rarely struggles in combat. Her fights are short, controlled, and decisive. There's no desperation, no visible fear, and almost no moments where defeat feels possible.
She also physically looks like one, despite sounding and mostly behaving like a fully grown adult. With that said, it is refreshing to see the 1,000-year-old demon trope used on a character that doesn't look like a straight-up child. Shonen that are intended to play into the mostly male power fantasy will have their OP character placed front and center, as the plot revolves around how cool and epic they are. Despite having the most amount of screen time, Frieren feels like less of a main character and more of a passive observer. Her longevity gives her a sort of omnipotent perspective on the events throughout the series, and she'll often choose to take a step back to allow other characters to handle a situation on their own rather than resolving it herself. Despite being an extremely experienced mage, Frieren shows little interest in combat magic, choosing instead to focus on spells with more practical uses. She'll nonchalantly skim over piercing spells like Zoltrok, but get excited at the prospect of a spell that can clean cooking utensils. This communicates to us that her vast amount of power isn't a result of her seeking it out relentlessly, but that it's simply a consequence of her longevity. She learned combat magic not because she really wanted to, but because she needs to be able to protect herself to some extent on long journeys, and she might as well add those spells to her ever-growing collection. Frieren is not OP because she has an endless amount of power, but because she has a virtually endless amount of time in which to learn new spells and build up her pool of mana.
So why do so many fans argue that Frieren is an OP character done right? The defense is simple. Frieren isn't about physical danger, it's about emotional weight. Her strength isn't meant to create suspense in battle. It's meant to highlight the passage of time and the cost of immortality. Frieren's power allows her to survive everything, but it can't protect her from regret. In theory, that's a brilliant inversion of the OP trope, but theory and execution aren't the same thing. Frieren's power removes nearly all external stakes from the story. When danger appears, the audience already knows the outcome. That means tension has to come entirely from internal conflict. The problem is that Frieren herself is emotionally restrained to the point where that internal struggle rarely feels urgent. She reflects, she remembers, she regrets. But she rarely struggles in real time. This is where the debate splits. Supporters argue that Frieren's emotional arc is subtle and realistic, that centuries of emotional suppression wouldn't suddenly explode into dramatic breakdowns. that her growth is slow, quiet, and internal. And that's a valid interpretation. Frieren's power makes her detached, and that detachment is the point. Critics argue that subtlety without contrast becomes flat. When an OP character is emotionally distant and physically untouchable, scenes lose friction. Without friction, storytelling loses momentum. Frieren rarely feels pushed into change. She drifts into it.
This opens her up to certain vulnerabilities. If the plot ever required her to face off against another elf significantly older than her, for example, it's safe to say she would have a hard time. Fortunately for her, elves are hard to come by, due to them having almost no drive to reproduce.
An overpowered character done right still needs pressure. Not necessarily physical danger, but emotional confrontation, moral dilemmas, or irreversible consequences. Frieren avoids most of these. She observes loss more than she experiences it. Time passes, people age, and worlds change. But Frieren remains largely the same. That consistency makes sense for her character, but it also limits engagement.
Imagine the elves in Lord of the Rings share this asexual quality, but I'm not enough of a fan to know the canon, so feel free to correct me on that. Frieren even states herself that she's been bested in battle on 11 different occasions throughout the centuries. She was defeated 4 times by demons, once by another elf, and surprisingly 6 times at the hands of human mages. It can be extrapolated that this is because Frieren often has no need to strategize, relying instead on her sheer amount of experience to get her through most battles. She can still be defeated by opponents even if they have a significantly lower amount of mana, provided that they have the right strategy or natural talents. And Frieren is aware of her own shortcomings. She can one-shot pretty much anything, but it takes time for her to fire off attacks, which is why Stark gets recruited. It's safe to assume she possesses healing magic, but only priests can heal poisons and lift curses. In comes Sign. Frieren's title of overpowered is only surface level in the sense that she could probably handle any other character in combat, but there are still exceptions and other variables at play.
Another issue is how Frieren's power affects other characters. Fern and Stark exist in her shadow. Their growth is measured against Frieren's overwhelming competence, which can unintentionally diminish their impact. When Frieren is present, she feels like a safety net, and safety nets kill suspense. Even when the story wants us to focus on the next generation, Frieren's presence reminds us that nothing can truly go wrong. That's the danger of OP protagonists. However, Frieren does succeed in one important area: tone. Her power reinforces the theme of time. Battles end quickly because, to Frieren, they always have. What feels climactic to others feels routine to her. That contrast between mortal urgency and immortal calm is genuinely well executed, but execution alone doesn't make it universally satisfying. The real question becomes this: does Frieren's OP status enhance the story enough to justify the loss of tension? For some viewers, yes. The emotional resonance, atmosphere, and reflection are enough. For others, the lack of stakes makes the story feel hollow. And that's why Frieren is such a divisive OP character. She's not written to be exciting. She's written to be contemplative. That's a bold choice. But bold choices come with trade-offs. Frieren trades excitement for mood, tension for tranquility, and spectacle for silence. Whether that's done right or done wrong depends entirely on what you want from an anime protagonist. Frieren is a rare case where an OP character doesn't break the story, but she also doesn't elevate it for everyone. Her power serves the theme perfectly while simultaneously limiting engagement. And that's the paradox. Frieren may be an overpowered character done correctly, but not necessarily one done compellingly for all audiences. And that's why this debate isn't going away anytime soon.